good evening, and welcome to the happenings in Medfield. As you may be aware, over the past few years, I've had the opportunity sitting here at the anchor desk with Mike Sullivan, the town administrator. We go in discussions of the past, the present, and the future. And so, without further ado, once again, nice to have you, Mike.
Good to be back, Jack. It's always a pleasure to come down here and I can find out what's going on in the town from your sources at the Blue Moon. So,
my hangout.
Yes, in fact, I was watching Tom Sweeney interview Mr. Freeman from the baker at the Blue Moon. It's a fascinating interview. I enjoyed it very much. So it's good to see he's stepping into the shoes of Ed Doherty. Those are big shoes to fill, but I'm sure Tom will do well at it. So,
you know, actually, that Blue Moon was very, very popular.
Oh, it is. Yes,
Yeah.
You know, everyone wondered whether when they expanded, whether they'd be able to do the business, and it seems to be always packed when you go in there.
They have. Well, that's quite a baker. And,
yes, that was evident from the interview. It was fascinating, all the little things you learned about baking and about his own personal history. I particularly enjoyed
something
it.
else again, isn't it?
Yes, it's
and
fascinating.
I remember when they both started. And at that time, I was at Shaw's. And we go over for coffee, and that was the beginning.
I remember
He
this.
and his wife. Yeah.
That's before I met you, and all I remember was that deep, booming voice saying, "We have a sale on asparagus today."
Yeah, that was some years ago.
Yes.
Mike, how is the situation existing up on the hill? And I call it the hill.
Yes,
with the new water tower.
Sure. Well, we have our own hill. Unlike Capitol Hill in Washington and Beacon Hill in Boston, we have Hospital Hill here. So, but the water tower is coming along. They are supposed to start mobilizing this week or next week. They said that they plan to work through the winter, which kind of surprised me. At first, they said they were going to try to get the foundation in and then button up for the winter and come back when the weather broke. But now they have indicated that they would like to try to work right through the winter and finish up by October of 2015. Of course, if we have a winter like Buffalo, which I hope we don't, they'll have to revise those plans. But it's their intention right now to try to push right through the winter, and I suppose it depends on whether they're able to get the foundation in before we get a hard freeze. And then the water main, that was held up getting the permits to cross under the railroad tracks on Hospital Road, but the contractor has all his ducks in order on that one, so he's going to come back after Thanksgiving and start either finishing up on the Hospital Road section and going under the railroad tracks, or doing the cross-country section from Hospital Road up to the site of the new water tower. So that's moving along quite well. And we're very lucky. The contractor on the water main is very good to work with. Everybody has been very happy with the quality of his work and his cooperation with the town. And I think the same will be true of the water tower contractor. Right now, this morning, I was meeting with Town Council and Dave Maxon from our radio tower study committee, putting together the bid specs for renting a cell tower space on top of the new tower. We're putting them out now. You know, the tower isn't built in anticipation that some of the carriers will want to locate on it. It's a very good spot for cell tower antennas, and we get I think it's around $115,000 a year in rental from antennas on the top of the Mount Nebo water tower. So if we can pick up a similar amount from the hospital tower, that will be very helpful. So
that's great. Now that we're in that area, how's everything coming along with the hospital?
Well, the latest date for acquiring the remainder of the hospital land is December 3rd. The selectmen are expected to sign the land disposition agreement, which is a prelude to recording of the deed on the property, on December 2nd, and they're hoping to record the deed on December 3rd. So, of course, those dates have been pushed back before, but we would like to get it done as soon as we can, at least in early December, because, as you know, with the election results, there'll be a new legislature coming into session and a new governor, and you're better to deal with a little bit of certainty than a lot of uncertainty. So if we can complete the transaction before the change of administration, it probably would be for the best.
I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, really that it goes to DECAM signs off, and then...
Yes, the legislation, some people thought the legislation actually transferred the land to the town. What the legislation did, it authorized DECAM, which stands for the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. They're a state agency that is in charge of all surplus state properties. The legislation gave DECAM the authority to sell the land to the town of Medfield. So, and that's what we're negotiating now. It have to be sign-offs from the Mass Historic Commission, and there has to be a land disposition agreement concerning the terms of the sale, and before the deed can actually be recorded. The purchase price is $3.1 million. The state is going to allow us to pay that over 10 years as a deduction on our cherry sheet. So there'll be no interest charges associated with that. It'll just be the straight $3.1 million. So it's a good price, but it does come with a lot of cleanup costs. So we'll have to see what happens in that regard. The committee, the various hospital committees have been meeting quite regularly about the cleanup along the river that's proceeding along quite well, and then about how to reuse the hospital property when we do acquire it. We're trying now to come up with contracts for mowing and plowing up there, so to keep the property reasonably accessible, and also some sort of surveillance or security measures to prevent any vandalism or unauthorized access to the buildings. We are concerned that somebody would try to break into the buildings. There is a history of people trying to film themselves inside of closed mental hospitals for whatever reason. Right now the buildings are all boarded up, but somebody did go up there with a pellet gun and started shooting out windows recently.
So I understand, especially there been vandalism at the chapel, which
Yes.
was a shame.
Yeah, it is.
I know you have a committee relative to those buildings. Any situation develop in that area?
They met last night. Today is the 20th of, we're filming this the 20th of November, and there's Thanksgiving coming up. I'm getting my calendar all messed up. But the committee met last night and got a update on the consultants' reports on the cost of rehabbing the buildings, and so they are working on that. There's some concern about the condition of many of the buildings that deteriorated quite badly, and of course there's some people that would like to save the buildings, and others feel that they have been allowed to or neglected for so long and allowed to deteriorate that they need to be taken down. So I'm sure that will be a topic for discussion in the near future.
Understandable. do you have any idea relative to the situation when you feel that this will start to fall in place?
Well, if the land is transferred December 3rd, that will be the biggest step. That will mean the town is now officially the owner of the property up there. And then the other things will fall into place subsequent to that, the maintenance contracts and security provisions. And then hopefully there'll be some sort of report for the next annual town meeting as to how we should proceed from there. It might not be the permanent resolution of the reuse of the property, but at least I think we need to report back to the town meeting on the direction it's heading in. So, but I know that they want to do a master plan of the site up there, and they want to have a lot of involvement, public involvement. I know they had a visioning session on the hospital down at the center at Medfield, about 8-9 months ago now, I believe it was. And that was very successful. They had over 100 people there, and there were a lot of input from the public. And it wasn't just the usual town officials that are on every committee in town. There was a good cross-section of people that went to that visioning session. So they're hoping to have something similar once we own the property and need to get more serious about how to best utilize it.
Well, everything then actually, as you look at it, Mike, it's headed in the right direction. You know, I've had a number of comments relative to the town garage. And those comments have been something else again. That building is beautiful.
It really is nice. You know, you take a look at it, and it's very sturdily built. It's going to be a long-lasting building. You know, the old town garage was sort of a glorified tin shed, I guess you'd call it, and was rusting out. And this building it's a very handsome building, and for anyone who hasn't been down there, I'd encourage them to take a ride through. I happened to be away visiting family when they had the dedication, so I missed that. But people I talked to that went to the dedication, they were quite impressed with it, and it has beautiful views overlooking the wetlands. They managed to maintain the views of the wetlands that border the town garage and go over to the back of the old landfill. So it's quite a nice site, and it's Electric Time donated the clock over the main entrance. The Garden Club has been working with the DPW. Of course, the DPW has done a lot of work with the Garden Club in terms of the island plantings around town. So the Garden Club wants to help do something nice with the entrance to the town garage. And Ken Feeney's also been working with Neil and Betty Sanders. They're going to try to come up with some planting suggestions. So I think it's something the town can be quite proud of and quite pleased. It came in, I don't know, $500,000 or $600,000 under budget.
Which is good.
Which is very good. So I think, you always fear that there are going to be unforeseen conditions that pop up during the course of construction, and you're going to have to go back to the town for more money, which is never a pleasant experience, having been there once or twice over the years. But in this case, we have money left over that we'll be able to turn back to the town. And of course, everybody's lining up with proposed uses for it. So
very true, very true. Mike, questions have come up, so I'm going to revert it right to you. The situation existing with the new fire and the new police building.
Well, there again, the Permanent Building Committee, which oversaw the construction of the town garage, has been working on the design of the public safety building with the police and fire chiefs. And they've really gone over it with a fine-tooth comb. A couple of times I've had to get up after a couple of hours of discussion about where the plugs should go and where the desks should go and where the windows should be moved to, and you can only take so much of that early in the morning. But the chiefs have been very, they realize that they're going to be held accountable for the building ultimately, and they are very proactive in trying to make sure everything is, every T is crossed and I is dotted. And I think it's going to be a handsome building. The architects tried to imitate the design of the town hall tower to sort of link that portion of North Street to the downtown, make sort of an attractive visual approach from the northern end of town. And I think, in cases some people say, well, do you need that? Isn't that going to be expensive? And I found over the years that sometimes what is expensive in the short run is very cost saving in the long run. If you build a building that endures, that lasts, that isn't a 20, doesn't start falling apart after 20 or 30 years, you're much better off in the long run. I think that's the case with the town garage. I think that's the case with the library and the town hall. Those buildings are almost 17 years old now, and they've held up very well. So I think it's worthwhile to build a building well and to plan it for the future needs of the town. So I hope that people will go on the website and try to take a look at the plans for it, or they just had 500 brochures printed up to hand out to people so they can get an idea of the layout. I think it's going to be a very nice addition to the town.
I look at Medfield, and what you have now at one time was fine, but now Medfield is growing. And so consequently, situations existing with fire and police, changes have to be made, which brings up a point. Will there be an extra town meeting relative to the fire and police?
Yes, there'll be an extra town meeting, but hopefully there will not be an extra election. This expenditure of this magnitude, and we're talking about $19 million bond issue, requires a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion override. But the way the committee is trying to structure it, they've asked the selectmen to call a town meeting early in March, prior to the town election, I think about a week before the town election, and then have the override question on the ballot for the town election so that it will be fresh in people's minds. And that will, as I said, be in early to mid-March for the town meeting, and then the town election is always the last Monday in March.
Well, you will have a special town meeting relative to fire and police, right?
Yes.
And then you'll have the regular town meeting.
Regular town meeting, which is the end of April, last Monday in April. So I believe it's the 27th, I think, this year of April.
Well, the situation relative to the town meeting regarding the fire and police new building, that's a situation we're talking budget factors, money factors, and so forth. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, you're always talking money when you're
doing
the operation of the town.
It's par for the course.
Yes, yes. But we're holding our own these days. We've had the classification here in the selectmen on Tuesday night, met with the assessors. They're required to have an annual classification hearing to decide whether to have a split tax rate, and we've never done it. We're way too heavily residential to have a split tax rate. If we did it, the impact on the businesses would be so great it would drive a lot of them out of town and make matters worse. But that's the last step in the tax rate setting process. So the assessors are hoping to have the tax rate approved by the Department of Revenue, State Department of Revenue, either this week or early next week, and then get the bills out in the mail early December.
Taxes come out in the middle of.
Well, normally on the quarterly tax bills, you have to send them out at least 30 days before the due date. In this case, this will be the third quarter for fiscal 15. Those taxes, that payment is due February 1st, so the bills wouldn't have to go out until December 31st. But a lot of people, for their own personal tax purposes, like to pay the tax bills before the end of the year. So to give them the option of doing that, the tax collector likes to mail the bills out early in December to give them adequate time to pay the bills by December 31st if they so choose. Most people don't, but there are a number of people that like to come in and pay their bills early. And as I said, it's usually related to tax planning purposes. So, but no, the this quarter tax bill will not be set until will not be due until February 1st. Tax rate actually is going down a little. Don't be fooled. It's we have to revalue every year, so the values are going up. That's why the rate goes down. People think the town makes money on a reval, and we don't. It really is, if X goes up, Y goes down, and Z stays the same. Individually, an individual can be helped or hurt by reval. If their property goes up more than the rest of the town, the tax bill might go up a little bit more than the rest of the town. Conversely, if their property goes up in value less than the rest of the town, they might have a little bit of savings on their tax bill over the rest of the town. My understanding is the valuation this year, values went up roughly 5%. Now, depending on the type of house and the location and a variety of other factors, that can vary from house to house. One year colonials are popular, the next year, ranches might be popular or contemporary. So I remember when everybody wanted to live on the outskirts of town. Now it seems that living close to the center of town seems more popular. So those houses seem to appreciate more than houses further away. So a lot of factors, but overall, I'd say and it's one of the good things about biting these projects off, these major capital projects like the town garage and the public safety building, on a regular basis saves money in the long run because you don't get these big bulges in the tax rate. I remember when we were doing all the sewer projects and the school renovations, taxes were going up 6, 7, 8% a year for a number of years there because our debt was soaring. Well, now with the interest rates being so low, and a lot of that old debt starting to be paid off, we have the ability to absorb some of these new capital projects without pushing the tax rate up, 7 or 8%. So we're trying to schedule these projects on a continuing basis so that we don't have these ups and downs in the tax rate.
That's excellent.
Unfortunately, they're mostly ups. So.
Usually things do.
Yes.
Question the budget.
The budget hearing this year for fiscal 16, my God, time flies, will be December 2nd, I believe it is. It's going to be the Selectmen's first meeting of the month. And the Warrant Committee has met, and they came in to meet with the Selectmen when the budgets were distributed by the town accountant. And they've already set their schedule for meeting with the various departments to review the budgets. We're also expecting a number of warrant articles this year. And there should be some hot discussions. I know there's been a lot of debate over whether dogs should or should not be allowed to walk in the cemetery. So I'm sure that will be a topic of discussion at town meeting. The school department has got a grant from the School Building Assistance Authority to replace the boilers at the Wheelock School. So they are in the process of designing that. Price tag probably somewhere in the $300,000 to $500,000 range. That's one of the suggestions for how to use the leftover money from the town garage project. That might be an appropriate use to avoid a borrowing for a relatively small amount of money. Incidentally, the boilers at the Wheelock School are the original boilers from when the school was built, which I believe was back in the 1960s, I believe. So they owe the town nothing. They've serviced the town quite well, but they do need to be replaced, and better to do that than to have the boiler fail in the middle of winter and have to shut the school down or have frozen pipes, whatever. So, and we get a 40% reimbursement on that. So we have to spend money in the first instance, but then we get about 40% of it back as reimbursement from the state. So,
insurance,
health insurance, or yes. Well, it's been a busy week. The Insurance Advisory Committee met last night to start talking about insurance. We have gotten renewal rates for the retirees plans because those are tied into the Medicare rate change, which changes on January 1st. So those rates have already been given to us. We have two Medicare plans, one with Blue Cross Blue Shield and the other through Tufts. And one of them went up 4%, and one of them went up 4.6%, I believe. There was no rate increase this past year. In fact, I believe the rates went down last year. So that's another one that kind of bounces up and down. On the active employees plan, which is the largest plan we again have two offerings there. We have a HMO and a PPO, both offered, both Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. We subscribe to them through a municipal pooled association called Mass Interlocal Insurance Associations, groups of cities and towns and housing authorities that join together to purchase insurance jointly. And the year before last, we had no increase. This current year, we had an increase of 8.8%, and we're expecting an increase for next year of somewhere between 0 and 8.8. We probably won't know that figure until around March. But it's a lot of uncertainty there, particularly with the national health insurance, or the I guess everybody refers to it as Obamacare, but I think it's called the Affordable Care Act, I think is the official title of it. So everybody's trying to figure out what's in that. And somebody mentioned there were like 52,000 or 56,000 pages of regulations in addition to the law itself, which I think is well over 100 pages. So, and they keep adding to it as they find situations that require new opinions or new regulations. It's crazy, this between the IRS code and the Affordable Care Act and the Social Security regulations and the environmental legislation. Someone sent me an email the other day of the requirements of the Stormwater Management Act, which is a federal law, and that governs water that falls out of the sky. And the federal government is now saying that it has to be contained on your own property. In the past, there were, you put it in a storm drain and it drained into a brook or a river, and now they're saying you must recharge the groundwater by keeping it on your own property. And we have to file, every town over 10,000 in the country has to file a 5-year application for a stormwater permit from the federal government. And someone sent out a list of 252 conditions that have to be addressed in the application for the stormwater permit. Now that's ridiculous to expect a town of 10,000 to have the ability to implement a program that detailed. First of all, it's just expensive to administer, and then if you have to comply with all these conditions, one of them was how often you clean your catch basins, what type of catch basins you put in, how often you sweep your streets. It's just ridiculous that the federal and state governments want to get down to that level of detail and bully not just cities and towns, but small businesses into complying with all these absurdly complicated rules and regulations. I mean,
well, it sounds like it.
We want to keep our streets swept, and we want to keep our catch basin clean. Do we need the federal government telling us and making us spend money on consultants to file a plan? It's just gotten out of control.
I've used the terminology relative to the government and other agencies. And I've used it individuals. Why be difficult with more effort? You can be impossible.
Well, I always say the longer I work in government, the more of an anarchist I become. Sometimes I wonder why we have it.
Mike, how's housing? I know that number of buildings going on.
Yes, a lot of activity. I guess that's a sign that the recession is winding down a bit, although it depends on who you talk to or who you read. But in Medfield, they've started work on that 40B. It's called the Park at Medfield. I believe it's down on West Street between Route 27 and the Millerstown line. Mm-hmm. On an industrial site down there, they're putting in 92 units of low-income apartments, 100% low income under the particular program they're using. They started site work on that about 2 weeks ago, and that probably will be done within a year, I would think. And then there's a developer that's putting up 10 condos on North Street between Cottage and Dale Street. It's about 3 or 4 houses down from the police fire station. They've cleared the site. They are preserving one of the houses. They're going to have 2 units in there, but there'll be ultimately 10 units of housing in there. And my understanding, the price range for those is going to be around $700,000. Used to get a house for that. In fact, when I first came here, there weren't any houses that expensive in the entire town. It's crazy what's happened to housing prices. So.
Mike, as I have said to you many, many times, as you and I have sat at the anchor desk, the old clock on the wall is telling me it's about time for us to say goodnight. But always, before we do, is there anything else you'd like to say and add before we say goodnight?
Sure. Just one other thing I should have mentioned is the Solid Waste Committee met this week and had some very good news. For the first time, they reached a recycling rate of 30% for the month of October. We usually were running in the mid-20s, but we hit 30% for October.
Excellent. Yeah.
And it's a credit to the Solid Waste Committee, to the SWAP team that worked down there all spring and summer and fall, encouraging people to swap their usable goods, to the enforcement activities that are taken to prevent people from unauthorized use, and from a general campaign to encourage people to recycle. I noticed they have signs there thanking people when they're leaving the landfill recycling, and I would like to echo that sentiment. And just remember that the more you recycle, the more you save, because it costs about $100 a ton to get rid of what you throw away. and it costs about $35 a ton to get rid of what you recycle. So there's a big opportunity for savings there. We are also hoping to renegotiate our contract on the incinerator and bring the price down a bit. Walpole's been working on that with us. We're part of a consortium with about 20 towns, I believe, that signed a contract with Wheelabrator, and they're meeting at this very moment out in Milford to present the results of their negotiations, and we expect them to lower the price somewhere in the $10 to $15 a ton range. So that should produce some big savings. The other thing I'd like to do is wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I hope that all goes well with the family and the cooking, and that everyone has a great time and has plenty to be thankful for this year. So enjoy.
Well, thank you, Mike. And on behalf of Medfield TV and myself, I wish everybody a happy holiday. And Mike, once again, thank you for sitting here with me at the old anchor desk and discussing the happenings in Medfield.
I look forward to it, Jack, as always. See you next month.
Yes, it's very, very interesting because there's many things that you talk about you never see in the paper, and that is the difference. This is Jack Peterson wishing you and yours the very best. Good night.
This program was made possible through the generous support of your Medfield friends and neighbors, folks just like you. And thanks for watching.